The day began like any other in the sprawling Capital's Space Defense Command Center. Monitors flickered with streams of data, radar operators tapped commands, and analysts quietly assessed routine traffic in the orbiting space lanes. The Capital, a beacon of political power and advanced technology, relied heavily on its defenses to detect any potential threats early. Despite decades of peace, vigilance was paramount. At the heart of the command center stood Lieutenant Erin Voss, a sharp-minded but unorthodox officer known for her calm under pressure and unconventional problem-solving. As she reviewed the latest scans, a sudden alert blared through the room. An unknown ship had just appeared on the radar, moving at an unprecedented speed directly toward the Capital. The ship's signature was unlike anything in the extensive galactic database. No known faction claimed it. No existing ship design matched its contours, and its propulsion system baffled the analysts. Panic quickly rippled through the command center. Operators double-checked their instruments, fearing a system glitch, but the readings were clear and consistent. The mysterious vessel was real and closing fast. The security protocols kicked into action. Military officials convened in the war room, debating how to respond to this unprecedented threat. Some demanded immediate deployment of fighter squadrons to intercept and, if necessary, destroy the intruder before it could reach the Capital. Others urged caution, fearing that an act of aggression might provoke an unknown but possibly innocent visitor. Meanwhile, news of the unidentified ship leaked to the public, sparking anxiety and speculation. Citizens looked up anxiously as the Capital's towering spires seemed vulnerable for the first time in generations. The government issued reassurances, but uncertainty hung thick in the air. Lieutenant Voss was summoned to lead a special investigation, team tasked with uncovering the nature of the unknown vessel. Her reputation for innovative thinking made her the ideal choice to approach this crisis without triggering an immediate military confrontation. Voss assembled a team of experts, xenolinguists, engineers, intelligence analysts, and a few seasoned pilots ready for any contingency. Their mission was clear yet daunting: identify the ship, understand its intentions, and, if possible, make contact. All while the clock ticked down. As the unknown ship advanced, the tension in the command center grew. Voss pored over the scant data they had: energy signatures, propulsion patterns, hull composition inferred from faint sensor readings. But none yielded a clear clue. It was as if the vessel belonged to a civilization outside all known galactic charts, or even something far more advanced. Political leaders met behind closed doors, wrestling with the stakes. Was this an invasion? A desperate refugee ship, or something else entirely? Their decisions could mean peace or destruction. Voss pushed to avoid rash decisions, believing that understanding was the key to survival. Yet even she could not predict what lay ahead. The part closes with the Capital's defenses fully mobilized and the unknown ship drawing ever closer, a looming enigma racing toward the heart of civilization, its purpose and nature still shrouded in mystery. Lieutenant Voss stands ready, knowing that the first contact could change everything. The mysterious ship continued its swift, silent journey toward the Capital, a silent specter on the radar that refused to answer any communication attempts. Despite repeated hails from the Capital's communication arrays, the vessel remained enigmatic. No response, no recognition of any known language or code. It was as if the ship was cloaked not just physically but in silence and mystery. Inside the Space Defense Command Center, Lieutenant Erin Voss and her team worked feverishly. The ship's approach trajectory was almost a direct line to the Capital's core orbital station, a course no one had ever seen before. Its speed fluctuated unpredictably, sometimes accelerating to speeds that should have been impossible according to known physics, then slowing at intervals as if calculating or testing the defenses below. The engineering specialists were equally baffled. The ship's propulsion system emitted energy signatures unlike any known drive technology. The traditional fusion engines, ion thrusters, or even experimental warp drives in the Capital's archives did not match what their sensors detected. Some theories emerged that this could be a prototype or technology from an unknown civilization, far beyond their star charts, or perhaps even an artificial intelligence-driven ship with self-evolving capabilities. Meanwhile, tensions in the Capital's political arena reached a boiling point. Factions within the government debated fiercely over the appropriate response. The Hawks, a hardline military faction, insisted that the ship was a hostile invader and should be destroyed immediately before it could reach the capital. They argued that any hesitation might be fatal, citing decades-old invasions and conflicts as justification for zero tolerance. On the other side were the Doves, politicians and advisors urging caution and diplomacy. They cautioned that this could be a peaceful visitor or even refugees in desperate need of aid. They argued that a rush to attack could ignite an interstellar war with unknown consequences, especially since the ship's origins and intentions were completely unclear. Lieutenant Voss found herself caught in the middle of this political storm. She understood the fear gripping the capital, but she also knew that acting without understanding could doom them all. With the clock ticking down, she insisted on attempting to decode the ship's technology and communication systems before pulling any triggers. Voss's team analyzed every detail they could gather, from electromagnetic pulses to the ship's hull composition gleaned from remote sensors. They even attempted to send out various signals, from universal mathematical patterns to cultural symbols, hoping to provoke any kind of response. But the ship remained silent, almost as if it was studying them as much as they were studying it. Back, on the ground, the citizens of the capital were growing restless. Rumors of impending war spread like wildfire, fueling fear and uncertainty. News channels broadcast speculative reports, each more alarming than the last. Curfews were considered, and emergency protocols began to ripple through the city's infrastructure. Despite the growing tension, Voss made a risky call to try sending a personalized message, a broadcast containing not just technical data, but a plea for peace and cooperation, spoken in a dozen different known galactic languages, including visual symbols representing goodwill and diplomacy. The hope was to trigger recognition or curiosity in whoever or whatever was aboard that ship. As the unknown vessel neared the capital's outer defenses, it suddenly slowed dramatically, coming to a near hover just beyond the perimeter. The pause was as unsettling as the approach itself. What was the ship waiting for? What decision was it making? The command center held its breath. The unknown approach had reached a critical juncture, and the fate of the capital, and perhaps much more, hung on what would come next. Would this be the moment of peaceful contact or the calm before a storm? The atmosphere inside the capital's Space Defense Command Center was electric, with tension and anticipation. After hours of silent approach, the unknown ship finally made its presence unmistakably known, not with weapons fire or aggression, but with a sudden burst of transmission. The vast room filled with a low hum as the communications arrays tuned in to receive the mysterious signal. Yet the message was unlike anything the linguists and cryptographers had ever seen. The transmission was a complex sequence of pulses, frequencies, and patterns that defied traditional communication formats. It was neither a language as the capital understood it, nor any known code or cipher. It resembled more a layered tapestry of sounds and light pulses, almost like a form of music or art embedded within a message. At first, the experts struggled to even identify its structure. Was it a warning, a greeting, a distress call? Lieutenant Aaron Voss, ever the determined leader, called upon her team of xenolinguists and codebreakers to work around the clock. Using every tool available, pattern recognition algorithms, AI-assisted translation models, and historical databases, they began the painstaking task of decoding the message's intent. Despite progress being slow, small breakthroughs began to emerge. The transmission seemed to contain segments that represented universal scientific constants, like the value of pi and the hydrogen spectral lines, commonly considered potential keys for interstellar communication. As the team peeled back the layers of the message, an unsettling realization dawned on them. The transmission was not a simple binary message, but rather a multi-dimensional communication, incorporating elements of time, emotion, and spatial awareness. It was as if the sender was attempting to convey a complex narrative, something far beyond mere words. This complexity only deepened the mystery and heightened the stakes. While the decoding efforts continued, The political tension in the capital's halls escalated. Military commanders were on edge, their forces fully mobilized and ready to act. The Hawks pushed for immediate offensive action, fearing the ship's delay was a ruse before a devastating strike. Meanwhile, the Doves pleaded for patience and further communication attempts, citing the ambiguous nature of the message as a sign the ship sought peaceful contact. In a dramatic and unprecedented move, Lieutenant Voss recommended a bold gesture of goodwill. She proposed dispatching an unarmed reconnaissance shuttle with a small team aboard, carrying a peace flag and a live feed of the capital's leaders, expressing their intentions of friendship and willingness to negotiate. Despite objections from many, the proposal was approved under strict conditions. The shuttle was prepared with haste, piloted by Captain Relin Thais, a veteran with a calm demeanor and sharp instincts. As the shuttle approached the alien vessel, the crew felt the weight of history pressing down on them. They transmitted greetings, in multiple formats, audio, visual, and even symbolic gestures, hoping to provoke a response. The alien ship's surface, previously smooth and unreadable, suddenly began to shimmer and display patterns resembling star maps and biological diagrams. The shuttle's sensors picked up faint energy pulses in response, indicating some form of acknowledgement. Suddenly, the alien vessel emitted a soft, harmonic tone that resonated deep within the shuttle's hull. The moment felt surreal. A silent handshake across the vast gulf of space and understanding. It was the first real contact, a fragile bridge between two unknown worlds. Back at the capital, the entire population held its breath. The unknown ship had stopped its advance, seemingly waiting for the outcome of this exchange. Lieutenant Voss and her team now faced the monumental task of interpreting not just a message, but the intentions of a species so alien they challenged humanity's very notions of communication. This first contact was only the beginning, opening a door to hope, uncertainty, and the complex journey that lay ahead for both the capital and the mysterious visitors. After the tense first contact, the capital's atmosphere shifted from one of uncertainty to cautious hope. The alien ship remained just outside the defensive perimeter, its shimmering hull now displaying complex patterns that suggested a form of communication. Back in the command center, Lieutenant Aaron Voss and her team worked tirelessly, piecing together the fragments of the cryptic messages intercepted from the vessel. As the team dug deeper into the transmissions, a startling revelation emerged. The ship's occupants were not invaders or conquerors, but refugees fleeing from a devastating catastrophe in a distant sector of the galaxy. Their home system had been ravaged by a cosmic disaster, an ancient stellar phenomenon causing massive gravitational distortions, tearing apart planets and destabilizing entire star clusters. The survivors had escaped in their advanced ship, seeking asylum and aid from any civilization capable of offering refuge. This revelation sent ripples through the capital's leadership and citizens alike. For many, the narrative shifted from fear to sympathy. The refugees were victims of circumstances far beyond their control, and their desperate arrival was a plea for sanctuary. Lieutenant Voss advocated strongly for a humanitarian response, emphasizing the importance of offering aid and protection. She argued that embracing the refugees was not just a moral imperative, but could also forge a new alliance with a technologically advanced civilization. However, the capital's political landscape was fractured. While many leaders and civilians favored compassion, a powerful faction within the government viewed the refugees with suspicion and hostility. This group, driven by fear and greed, suspected that the refugees' advanced technology concealed dangerous weapons or espionage tools. They argued that granting asylum could compromise the capital's security and sovereignty. Unknown to most, this faction began plotting behind the scenes. Their plan was to covertly seize control of the alien ship and its technology, hoping to reverse engineer the advanced systems for military dominance. They believed that if they could control the refugees' ship, the capital would gain an unbeatable edge over rival powers and secure its place as the dominant force in the galaxy. Meanwhile, the refugees aboard the alien ship watched the unfolding drama with wary eyes. They understood the capital's fears but also knew that their survival depended on trust and cooperation. They sent further transmissions expressing peaceful intentions and willingness to share knowledge, hoping to reassure their hosts. Tensions grew as the capital's defenders remained on high alert, unwilling to lower their guard despite the refugees' overtures. Public opinion became divided. While many citizens held vigils and protests in support of the newcomers, others demanded stricter security measures and even advocated for a preemptive strike. Lieutenant Voss found herself at a crossroads. Her commitment to peace and understanding was challenged by mounting political pressure and the shadowy machinations of the secret faction. She began covertly investigating their activities, uncovering evidence of unauthorized surveillance and sabotage attempts on the alien ship. As these revelations surfaced, the fragile trust between the capital and the refugees began to crack. Diplomatic negotiations became strained, with accusations flying and tempers flaring. The situation threatened to spiral into open conflict, with the capital poised on the brink of war. Yet amid this turmoil, Voss remained resolute. She organized a summit between the capital's leaders and the refugees' representatives, aiming to find common ground and establish a formal alliance based on mutual respect and shared interests. The chapter ends with the two sides preparing for a historic meeting, a delicate moment that could either heal the growing divide or shatter the fragile peace, determining the fate of both civilizations. The much-anticipated summit between the capital's leaders and the refugees' representatives was set to be the turning point, a chance to forge peace or trigger disaster. Tensions were at an all-time high, both within the government and among the citizens. Lieutenant Aaron Voss felt the crushing weight of responsibility, knowing that the fragile trust painstakingly built over weeks could shatter with a single misstep. The summit began with cautious diplomacy. The refugees, represented by an enigmatic figure named Kalen, spoke of their tragic past, the destruction of their homeworld by cosmic forces beyond anyone's control, their desperate flight across star systems, and their hope to find sanctuary. Their story touched many hearts, but skepticism lingered. Questions about their technology and intentions were raised repeatedly, and factions within the capital voiced suspicion that the refugees might be concealing something dangerous. The Hawks faction, led by General Corvin Malrek, openly challenged Kalen's claims. He argued that the refugees' advanced technology was likely a weapon in disguise, warning that the capital could not afford to take the risk of harboring such unknowns. His aggressive stance gained support from the more fearful segments of society, and the summit quickly became a battleground for ideology and power. As the talks dragged on, an unexpected crisis erupted. An explosion rocked the outskirts of the capital's orbital defenses, a sabotage attack that nearly destroyed a critical communications hub. The attack bore all the hallmarks of an inside job, and fingers immediately pointed toward the refugees. Panic spread through the capital like wildfire. Lieutenant Voss, refusing to let the situation spiral out of control, pushed for a thorough and impartial investigation. She personally oversaw the inquiry and discovered disturbing evidence of infiltration by agents from the secret faction within the capital's own government, the same faction that opposed aiding the refugees. It became clear that these extremists were orchestrating the chaos to sabotage peace efforts and justify harsher measures. Despite Voss's findings, the damage was done. The public's trust eroded rapidly, and protests erupted demanding the refugees be expelled or imprisoned. Riots broke out in the lower city districts, and security forces struggled to maintain order. The refugees, sensing the rising hostility, prepared their ship for potential evacuation but remained committed to dialogue, pleading for calm and understanding. In the summit chamber, tempers flared. Kalen warned that if the capital continued down this path of distrust and aggression, their people would be forced to defend themselves, possibly with devastating force. The warning was not a threat, but a plea for reason. The breaking point arrived when a rogue element from the extremist faction launched an unauthorized attack on the alien ship, deploying armed drones in a surprise strike. The alien vessel, equipped with superior defensive technology, responded with overwhelming force, disabling several defense platforms and sending a clear message that any aggression would be met with decisive retaliation. The capital's military command was thrown into chaos. Leaders scrambled to prevent full-scale war, but the fragile peace shattered. Lieutenant Voss called for an emergency ceasefire and urged all sides to reconsider before plunging the capital into a conflict from which none would emerge victorious. This part ends on a cliffhanger. The capital stands on the brink of war, with trust shattered and survival hanging by a thread. The fate of two civilizations now depends on whether reason can prevail over fear and hatred. The capital's atmosphere was heavy with the tension of near conflict, but in the wake of the devastating skirmish between the alien ship and the capital's defense forces, a hard-earned silence settled. Both sides had suffered damage, physical and emotional, and the consequences of the unauthorized attack had become painfully clear. The rogue extremists who had ignited the conflict were exposed, their intentions laid bare for all to see. Their actions, born of fear and lust for power, had nearly doomed any chance of peace. Lieutenant Aaron Voss, having risked everything to uncover the truth and prevent war, now stood at the forefront of the fragile peace process. The capital's leaders, shaken by the close brush with disaster, finally united in their determination to avoid further bloodshed. Emergency councils were convened, and measures were taken to root out extremists within the government and military. The lessons of trust and cooperation were seared into the collective consciousness. On the alien vessel, Kalin and their people repaired their damaged ship and worked alongside the capital's engineers. Despite the scars of suspicion and conflict, both sides found common ground in their shared desire to survive and prosper. The refugees began to share knowledge of their advanced technology, methods to stabilize star systems, energy sources far more efficient than anything the capital had known, and medical advances that could save countless lives. This exchange marked the beginning of a partnership that transcended fear and prejudice. Lieutenant Voss spearheaded the establishment of a joint council composed of representatives from both civilizations. Their mission was to oversee integration efforts, security cooperation, and cultural exchange programs designed to bridge the vast gulf between two very different worlds. Schools were opened, languages taught, and shared histories explored. For many citizens of the capital, the refugees were no longer alien threats, but neighbors and friends. Yet, the path was not without obstacles. Deep-seated fears and old grudges lingered. Some factions continued to resist the newcomers, wary of losing influence and power, but the overwhelming majority embraced this new chapter, recognizing that unity was their best defense against the unpredictable dangers of the wider galaxy. Lieutenant Voss became a symbol of hope and resilience. Her leadership in navigating the crisis earned her widespread respect. She often reflected on the delicate balance between vigilance and openness, understanding that the capital's survival depended not just on strength, but on empathy and wisdom. The Mouse story concludes with a symbolic gesture. The alien ship, once a harbinger of dread, now anchored peacefully in the capital's main spaceport. Citizens gather for a grand ceremony celebrating the new alliance, hopeful for a future built on mutual respect. As the sun rises over the city, shining on the gleaming hull of the once unknown vessel, a sense of renewal fills the air. Alert! Unidentified ship heading straight for the capital had evolved from a warning into a story of transformation, an urgent reminder that fear of the unknown can divide, but understanding and courage can unite. In the vastness of space, two civilizations found not enemies but partners.